James Madison quotes on recognizing our rights. The purpose of the separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. Philosophy is common sense with big words. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power knowledge gives. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws are so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. The means of defense against foreign danger has always been the instruments of tyranny at home. It may not be easy, in every possible case, to trace the line of separation between the rights of religion and the civil authority with such distinctness as to avoid collisions and doubts on unessential points. The accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. The truth is that all men having power ought to be mistrusted. Wherever the real power in a government lies, there is the danger of oppression. There are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments of those in power, than by violent and sudden usurpations. In our governments, the real power lies in the majority of the community. The advancement of science and the diffusion of information is the best aliment to true liberty. The tendency to usurpation on one side or the other, or to a corrupting coalition or alliance between them, will be best guarded against by an entire abstinence of the government from interference in any way whatsoever, beyond the necessity of preserving public order, and protecting each sector against trespasses on its legal rights by others. Freedom has more often been lost in small steps by progressive incrementalism, than it has been by catastrophic upheavals such as violence or war. The invasion of private rights is chiefly to be apprehended, not from the acts of government contrary to the sense of its constituents, but from acts in which the government is the mere instrument of the major number of the constituents. 16. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Americans have the right and advantage of being armed, unlike the citizens of other countries whose governments are afraid to trust the people with arms. A popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it, is but a prologue to a farce or a tragedy or perhaps both. I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution which granted a right to Congress of expending, on objects of benevolence, the money of their constituents. Each generation should be made to bear the burden of its own wars, instead of carrying them on, at the expense of other generations. A well-regulated militia, composed of the body of the people, trained in arms, is the best most natural defense of a free country. Where an excessive power prevails, property of no sort is duly respected. No man is safe in his opinions, his person, his faculties, or his possessions. The people are the only legitimate fountain of power, and it is from them that the constitutional charter, under which the several branches of government hold their power, is derived. The happy union of these states is a wonder, their constitution, a miracle, their example, the hope of liberty throughout the world. The rights of persons and the rights of property are the objects for the protection of which the government was instituted. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, you must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. Wherever there is interest and power to do wrong, wrong will generally be done. The executive has no right, in any case, to decide the question, whether there is or is not cause for declaring war. The internal effects of immutable policy poisons the blessings of liberty itself. A sincere and steadfast cooperation in promoting such a reconstruction of our political system would provide for the permanent liberty and happiness of the United States. That this liberty of the press is often carried to excess, that it has sometimes degenerated into licentiousness, is seen and lamented, but the remedy has not yet been discovered. Perhaps it is an evil inseparable from the good with which it is allied, perhaps it is a shoot which cannot be stripped from the stalk without wounding vitally the plant from which it is torn. However desirable those measures might be which might be correct without enslaving the press, they have never yet been devised in America. Every word decides a question between power and liberty. The security intended to the general liberty consists in the frequent election and in the rotation of the members of Congress. The state legislatures will jealously and closely watch the operations of this government, and be able to resist with more effect every assumption of power than any other power on earth can do. And the greatest opponents to a federal government admit the state legislatures to be sure guardians of the people's liberty. People will continue to seek justice until it is found, or until liberty is lost in the pursuit. The civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established, nor shall the full and equal rights of conscience be in any manner, or on any pretext infringed. As a man is said to have a right to his property, he may be equally said to have a property in his rights. The diversity in the faculties of men, from which the rights of property originate, is not less an insuperable obstacle to an uniformity of interests. The protection of these faculties is the first object of government. In republics, the great danger is that the majority may not sufficiently respect the rights of the minority. Liberty and order will never be perfectly safe until a trespass on the Constitution provisions for either shall be felt with the same keenness that resents an invasion of the dearest rights. In suits at common law, trial by jury in civil cases is as essential to secure the liberty of the people as any one of the pre-existent rights of nature. Democracies have been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and in general, being as short in their lives as they have been violent in their death. Liberty is to faction what air is to fire. The definition of the right of suffrage is very justly regarded as a fundamental article of republican government. In a free government, the security for civil rights must be the same as that for religious rights. It consists in the one case in the multiplicity of interests, and in the other, in the multiplicity of sects. The degree of security in both cases will depend on the number of interests and sects, and this may be presumed to depend on the extent of the country and number of people comprehended under the same government. liberty may be endangered by the abuses of liberty as well as by the abuses of power. A good government implies two things: first, fidelity to the object of government, which is the happiness of the people; secondly, a knowledge of the means by which that object can be best attained. A man has a property in his opinions and the free communication of them. Thank you for watching. Please help us reach more subscribers to my channel.